The warehouse was silent except for the sound of a truck engine cooling in the dark. Inside the building, a single light bulb swung slowly from the ceiling. It made long shadows move across the dusty floor. A man named Daniel Carter sat tied to a metal chair. His hands were bound. His feet were tied. A strip of tape covered his mouth. Across the room, two men argued quietly in Spanish. One of them looked nervous. "This is getting dangerous," he whispered. The other man shook his head. "No. The family will pay. They always pay." Daniel tried to move his chair, but the rope held him tight. His heart was pounding so loudly he thought the kidnappers could hear it. He had been taken just a few hours earlier. But what Daniel didn't know was something much bigger was happening. Outside that warehouse, across 2 countries, investigators were already searching for him. Because Daniel Carter was not the first victim. And he would not be the last. The kidnapping ring behind his capture had been operating for months, moving victims between Mexico and the United States. And no one knew who was running it. Suddenly, one of the kidnappers turned toward Daniel. He picked up a phone. "The family will receive the message tonight," he said. Daniel felt fear rise in his chest. Because if the ransom was not paid, no one knew what would happen next. And far away, a phone was just about to ring. But the person answering that phone would discover something even more terrifying. This kidnapping was only one piece of a much larger crime network. And the truth behind it would shock both countries. But to understand how Daniel ended up in that chair, we must go back to the beginning. 6 months earlier, Daniel Carter lived in El Paso, Texas. He worked as a small business owner who repaired construction equipment. His shop sat near a busy road where trucks passed every day. Most mornings were quiet. Daniel would unlock the shop, drink coffee, and greet customers who came with broken machines. His younger sister, Emily Carter, often visited after work. "You work too much," she joked one afternoon. Daniel laughed. "Someone has to fix the machines that build this city." Life was normal. Peaceful. But not far away, another group of people was planning something very different. Across the border in Mexico, a man named Victor Alvarez sat inside a dim office. Victor was calm, quiet, careful. He ran a criminal network that stretched across the border. His group did many illegal things. But the most profitable operation was kidnapping. Victor had learned something simple. When criminals kidnapped wealthy people, police responded quickly. But when they kidnapped ordinary workers or small business owners, families often paid quietly to avoid attention. That meant less police pressure, more money, and fewer risks. Victor's organization had members in several cities. Some watched for possible victims. Some handled transportation. Others made ransom calls. It was a system that had worked for months. Until one mistake changed everything. 3 months before Daniel's kidnapping, another man disappeared. His name was Marcus Hill. Marcus was a delivery driver who crossed the border often for work. One evening, Marcus never returned home. His truck was later found abandoned near a parking lot. Police searched for him. But the trail disappeared quickly. What investigators didn't know at the time was that Marcus had also been taken by Victor's group. And his case quietly connected to several others. Back in El Paso, Daniel Carter had no idea any of this was happening. One evening after closing his shop, he walked toward his truck in the parking lot. The sun was setting. The street was quiet. He opened his truck door. And that was when it happened. A van pulled up beside him. The side door slid open. 2 men jumped out. Before Daniel could react, a bag was pulled over his head. Strong hands grabbed him. "Don't move," someone said. Daniel tried to shout. But the sound never came out. Within seconds, he was pushed into the van. The door slammed shut. And the vehicle drove away into the night. A security camera across the street captured only a few seconds of the event. A dark van. 2 men. And then nothing. When Emily Carter called her brother later that night, he didn't answer. At first, she thought he was busy. But when Daniel still didn't respond the next morning, she became worried. She drove to his shop. His truck was gone. But something felt wrong. Emily called the police. Detective Mark Rivera was assigned to the case. Rivera had worked many missing person cases. But something about this one felt different. When officers checked traffic cameras, they found something strange. The van that took Daniel had crossed toward the border shortly after the kidnapping. That meant the investigation might now involve two countries. Rivera leaned back in his chair. "This just got complicated," he said. Meanwhile, in the warehouse across the border, Daniel Carter was still tied to the chair. Hours had passed. The kidnappers were preparing the ransom message. One of them dialed a phone number. The call connected. Emily Carter answered. "Hello." The kidnapper spoke calmly. "We have your brother." Emily froze. What are you talking about?" "If you want to see him alive again, you must listen carefully." Emily's hands began to shake. "How much money?" she asked quietly. But the man on the phone said something that made her heart stop. "The money is only the beginning." Emily's voice trembled. "What does that mean?" The kidnapper paused. Then he said something that changed everything. "Your brother is not the only person we have taken." And somewhere far away, Detective Rivera was about to uncover a clue that would reveal the truth. This was not just a kidnapping. It was part of a dangerous cross-border kidnapping ring. And Daniel Carter had just become their newest victim. Emily Carter could barely breathe as she held the phone. "Your brother is not the only person we have taken." The words echoed in her mind. Her hands trembled so badly she had to sit down on the kitchen chair. What do you mean?" she asked. But the voice on the phone stayed calm. "You will receive instructions soon. Do not contact the police." Then the call ended. The line went silent. Emily stared at the phone for a long moment. But what the kidnappers did not know was something important. The police were already involved. Across town, Detective Mark Rivera was studying the security footage again. The video showed the van pulling up beside Daniel's truck. Two men jumped out. In seconds, Daniel was taken. Rivera paused the video. "Zoom in right there," he said to the technician. The image became clearer. The van had a small scratch along the side door and a broken taillight. Not much, but it was something. "Find every camera along that road," Rivera said. "I want to see where that van went." Meanwhile, in the dark warehouse across the border, Daniel Carter sat quietly in the chair. The rope around his wrists was tight. His arms hurt. The tape over his mouth made it hard to breathe. Two kidnappers were talking nearby. One of them looked nervous. "We're getting too much attention," he said. "The last job already brought police activity." The other man shrugged. "Victor said we keep going." That name caught Daniel's attention. Victor. Who was Victor? The nervous kidnapper walked toward Daniel and pulled the tape off his mouth. "Listen," the man said quietly. "You stay calm and nothing bad happens." Daniel swallowed. "Please, my family doesn't have much money." The man shook his head. "That's not my decision." Then he stepped away. Back in Texas, Emily Carter was sitting across from Detective Rivera. She had told him about the phone call. Rivera listened carefully. "They said Daniel wasn't the only victim," she said. Rivera nodded slowly. "That part worries me." Emily looked confused. "Why?" Rivera opened a folder. Inside were photos from several missing persons cases. 3 men. 2 women. All had disappeared over the past year. All near the same region. "We believe these cases may be connected," Rivera explained. Emily's face turned pale. "You mean, there are more kidnappings?" Rivera nodded. "Yes. And they may all be part of the same ring." The investigation quickly grew larger. Soon federal agents joined the case. Because the van had crossed the border, the FBI and Mexican authorities were contacted. Agents began sharing information. Phone records. Border crossing data. Vehicle descriptions. Little by little, the picture became clearer. The kidnapping group was organized. Very organized. Some members lived in the United States. Others operated in Mexico. Victims were often taken in American cities. then quickly moved across the border to hidden locations. This made investigations extremely difficult. By the time police realized what happened, the victims were already gone. One evening, Rivera received an important update. A traffic camera had captured the van again. This time it was near a small border checkpoint. The image showed something interesting. A sticker on the back window. Rivera leaned closer. "Run that symbol," he said. The analyst typed quickly. After a few minutes, she turned toward him. "That sticker belongs to a construction supply company in Ciudad Juarez." Rivera's eyes narrowed. "That's our lead." Meanwhile, inside the warehouse, Daniel noticed something strange. One of the kidnappers kept checking a phone nervously. Another man was pacing near the door. Something was wrong. Finally, the door opened. A tall man stepped inside. The room became quiet immediately. Everyone straightened up. Daniel could feel the change in the air. This man was different. He moved slowly and confidently. His eyes scanned the room. Then he stopped in front of Daniel. "So this is the new one," the man said calmly. Daniel looked up. "Please. I just want to go home." The man smiled slightly. "That depends on your family." Then he turned to the others. "Have the ransom instructions been sent?" "Yes," one kidnapper replied. "Good," the man said. Then he leaned closer to Daniel. "My name is Victor." Daniel's heart sank. This was the man behind everything. The leader of the kidnapping ring. Victor looked at him quietly. "Do you know how many people have sat in that chair before you?" Daniel didn't answer. Victor smiled again. "Enough to make this business very successful." Then he stood up. "But now we may have a small problem." One of the kidnappers looked worried. "What problem?" Victor spoke calmly. "The police are getting closer." The room went silent. Daniel felt a spark of hope. But Victor continued speaking. "If they find this place, we move the prisoners immediately." Daniel's stomach dropped. Move them. That meant something even worse could happen. And just then, one of the kidnappers ran into the room. "There's activity on the road," he shouted. Victor turned sharply. "What kind of activity?" "Vehicles, a lot of them." Victor's face became serious. Because if those vehicles belonged to the police, then the entire kidnapping operation was about to be exposed. The room inside the warehouse suddenly felt smaller. "There's activity on the road," the man repeated. Victor Alvarez walked slowly toward the door and looked through a narrow window. Far away in the darkness, faint lights were moving. Headlights. More than just one car. Victor's face stayed calm, but the men around him grew nervous. Could it be the police? One asked. Victor didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked back at Daniel Carter sitting in the chair. For the first time, Daniel saw something new in Victor's expression. Concern. Across the border, several vehicles were moving quietly along a desert road. Inside the lead SUV sat Detective Mark Rivera and two federal agents. Their radios were silent. Their headlights were dim. They had spent hours tracking the van connected to Daniel's kidnapping. Finally, one of the surveillance teams had found something. A warehouse outside the city. Suspicious vehicles. And possible movement inside. Rivera looked at the map on the dashboard. "If Daniel is there," he said quietly, "this ends tonight." Inside the warehouse, Victor gave quick instructions. "We leave in 5 minutes," he told the group. The nervous kidnapper looked shocked. "Leave? What about the prisoners?" Victor's voice was firm. "They come with us." Daniel felt a cold wave of fear run through him. Being moved meant the police might lose track of him again. And maybe forever. One of the kidnappers untied Daniel from the chair. "Stand up," he said. Daniel's legs were weak after sitting so long. But he stood slowly. Another door in the warehouse opened. Daniel realized something terrible. He wasn't the only person being held there. 2 other captives were brought out from a small back room. A young man and an older woman. Both looked exhausted. Daniel's heart sank. The kidnapper on the phone had told the truth. There were more victims. Outside, Rivera's team stopped their vehicles several hundred yards away. The plan was simple. Mexican authorities had joined the operation. Together they would surround the warehouse quietly before moving in. Agents checked their equipment. Radios, flashlights, protective gear. Rivera looked toward the dark building in the distance. "Everyone ready?" he asked. Several voices answered at once. "Ready." Back inside, Victor's men were rushing. A van was pulled around to the back door. "Load them in," Victor ordered. The kidnappers began moving the prisoners. Daniel was pushed toward the vehicle. He looked around desperately. Maybe the police were already close. Maybe help was coming. But the night outside looked empty. Just as the kidnappers opened the van door, a loud voice suddenly echoed through the night. "Police! Do not move!" Bright lights exploded across the warehouse yard. Flashlights. Vehicle headlights. Search beams from several directions. For a second, everyone froze. Victor's men panicked. One dropped the keys. Another stepped backward in shock. The police had found them. "Stay where you are." Rivera shouted again. Agents moved forward carefully. Some from the front. Others from the sides. Mexican officers approached from the back road. The warehouse was completely surrounded. Victor stood still in the middle of the yard. His face was calm again. He slowly raised his hands. "It appears the night is over," he said quietly. One by one, the kidnappers surrendered. The prisoners were quickly moved away from the van. Agents untied their hands and checked if they were hurt. Daniel Carter felt the ropes finally come off his wrists. He could barely believe it. After hours of fear, it was over. Rivera walked toward Daniel. "You're safe now," he said. Daniel nodded slowly. "Thank you." Nearby, Victor Alvarez was placed in handcuffs. For months he had run a kidnapping ring across 2 countries. But tonight, the operation had ended. Evidence was collected. Phones, vehicles, documents. All of it would help investigators understand how the criminal network worked. Later that night, Daniel spoke with his sister Emily by phone. Her voice shook with relief. "I was so scared," she said. "I'm okay," Daniel replied softly. "You're coming home." In the following weeks, investigators from both the United States and Mexico worked together to dismantle the rest of the kidnapping ring. Several other members were arrested. Victims from earlier cases were identified. Families finally received answers. The case became an example of how cooperation between 2 countries could stop dangerous cross-border crime. For Daniel Carter, the experience changed his life forever. But he was lucky. He survived. And because the investigation moved quickly, a criminal network that had taken many victims was finally brought to justice. The kidnapping ring that once operated across borders had been exposed, and its leader would never run it again.